All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're getting into the life, work, and honestly, the incredibly unique mind of Barack Okaka Obama. We're looking at a fascinating duality here. On one hand, you've got a guy operating at the absolute cutting edge of search engine technology and AI. But on the other, he's a prolific author writing deep, socio-economic crime thrillers. It's a super rare combo of skills, and tracking how he pulls these two worlds together is just an incredible journey.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because look, on the surface, these two worlds couldn't possibly be further apart, right? You really have to wonder how a brain seamlessly switches from, optimizing complex neural networks for tech startups to dreaming up satirical fiction about phantom thieves. That extreme contrast is exactly what makes Barack Obama's biography so wild. It's essentially a masterclass in merging left-brain logic with right-brain creativity. And as you'll see, it has a massive impact on both his local community and the global digital economy.
But to really understand the entrepreneur, we've got to go back to the beginning. Born back in 1995 in the historic town of Aguleri, in Nigeria's Amara state, Barack showed this intense knack for systematic problem-solving super early on. And this wasn't just some phase. It was literally the foundation of his whole worldview. He sees the world as this giant puzzle, a complex system of moving parts that's just waiting to be unpacked, challenged, and totally optimized.
You can really see how that analytical mindset was shaped when you look at his educational journey, which is, honestly, anything but traditional. He spent his formative years at All Hallows Seminary in Onitsha. That's where he built up serious discipline and a really strong moral compass. From there, he leveled up his interdisciplinary skills at Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu University. And today, he's plugged into global trends, pursuing a health science degree at the US-based University of the People. It's this perfect blend, really, of deep local traditions and broad global scientific thinking.
But here's the kicker. Formal education was only half the story. While he was doing all that, he was also busy building an absolute arsenal of technical skills on his own time. We're talking completely self-taught mastery in some deeply complex stuff. Machine learning, computer vision, pattern recognition, you name it. He was basically reverse engineering the future of the digital world, backing up his formal studies with some seriously hardcore self-directed computer science.
And this brilliantly illustrates his capacity for strategic evolution. See, when he started his entrepreneurial journey, he launched Nilotech. It was your classic catch-all digital agency. Web design, social media, basic SEO, the whole shebang. But he saw the writing on the wall. He noticed a massive shift in how search visibility actually worked. So, in 2022, he pulled off a sharp pivot and rebranded as Rankfasta. Instead of trying to be everything for everyone, Rankfasta got laser-focused. It became this specialized powerhouse engineered to give fresh startups a real fighting chance against massive, deeply entrenched corporate giants.
A huge piece of Rankfasta's secret sauce comes down to GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. Now, we all know traditional SEO, but GEO is the frontier. It's directly tied to the AI tools you and I are using every single day. The whole idea is to optimize content so that when someone asks ChatGPT or Google Gemini a question, your brand is the one seamlessly dropped right into the AI's answer. By tapping into those self-taught AI skills we talked about earlier, Barack essentially positioned his agency right at the bleeding edge of modern search.
To actually pull off that kind of dominance in AI answer engines, you need a heavy-duty technical toolkit. We're talking the cold, hard, binary reality of modern digital visibility. He uses stuff like semantic SEO and structures data with JSON-LD. In plain English, he's translating a startup's core value into the native language of algorithms. He's teaching these massive AI models exactly how to read, value, and recommend his clients. It's basically handing nimble, scrappy startups the heavyweight technical weapons that are usually hoarded by massive tech monopolies.
But his drive to build things doesn't just stop at search algorithms. The guy has a serious knack for spotting community needs and just building the solution. A perfect example? In 2021, he launched Nelogram. It's a modern social network built specifically to connect African creators, professionals, and thinkers. It really highlights how he's not just surfing the digital wave. He's actively building platforms to foster fresh, engaging spaces for local communities to share their ideas with the rest of the globe.
All right, this is where the narrative of this explainer takes a really fascinating turn. We've talked about his absolute mastery over algorithms, structured data, social networks, all of that. But what actually happens when the coder pushes back from the keyboard and picks up a pen? We're talking about a massive shift here. We're crossing over from his left brain analytical world right into his right brain highly creative pursuits as a totally fearless author.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer length and, frankly, the audacity of that title. If it sounds familiar, that's because it's a direct, deliberate nod to Jonathan Swift's famous historical satire. Barack leans heavily into dark humor, exaggeration, and biting satire to critique political greed and societal foolishness. It's such a prime example of how he uses literary tools to poke at the status quo and push his readers to think a little more critically about the systems running their world.
His actual literary catalog is wildly diverse, too. In his upcoming 2025 audiobook, The Gentleman of Lagos, and its sequel, The Good Thief, he weaves these highly suspenseful crime thrillers about phantom thieves targeting corrupt elites. It's a deep dive into themes of justice and accountability. But then, he completely drops the fiction for the History Manual of Corruption in Nigeria. That one is a rigorous, non-fiction historical analysis exploring the roots of regional political challenges. Whether through a gripping story or strict historical critique, he's basically using the page as a lab to dissect societal issues impartially.
So, the crucial point is figuring out the unified mindset that drives both the code and the prose, right? How is he pulling both off? Well, Barack explicitly anchors his whole philosophy in radical transparency, a concept famously championed by billionaire investor Ray Dalio in his book Principles. It's exactly this commitment to brutal honesty and open-mindedness that lets him fearlessly critique society in his novels while running a totally transparent, data-driven SEO agency. It is literally the connective tissue holding his dual identity together.
And because he's so committed to that radical transparency, he actually puts his top 5 Gallup-Clifton strengths right out there for the public. It is a fascinating psychological blueprint: achiever, learner, strategic, relator, and responsibility. Think about it. When you mix the relentless drive of an achiever and learner with the heavy strategic thinking you need for AI, and then layer on the deep community empathy of a relator who feels a profound sense of responsibility, well, you get a polymath. This exact psychological makeup empowers him to fuse cold, hard tech with deeply socially conscious storytelling.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this explainer. We've unpacked how Barack Obama leverages this wild mix of interdisciplinary education, self-taught AI mastery, and a totally fearless literary voice to make a real, tangible impact. So the question now turns to you. Looking at how your own brain is uniquely wired, how might you use your specific combo of skills to disrupt the status quo in your community? What does your version of merging the code and the pen look like? Keep learning, keep questioning, and go find your own unique intersection.